What's doing, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. If you've never been here before, please check out many of the videos that I have up. There's plenty of them to watch. Everybody else, welcome back. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read you a little story that I wrote many years ago. I actually read this into my channel over a year ago, so some of my older viewers may have heard this before, but you didn't hear the conversation that's going to take place after I read it, and it's time for my new viewers to get a feel. And what this is about is the typical day inside of a medium security prison. First, I was in the maximum security prison. I did a total of 17 years. And then I earned my way down to the medium security prison. And we hear a lot about how abusive correctional officers are. We hear a lot about the incidents that take place in the Department of Corrections. But when people ask me, Fish, what was the hardest part about doing time in the prison system? You know, I obviously missing freedom, missing my family, those things take priority when it comes to what was the hardest part about doing time. But besides those things, the hardest part about doing time was the so called men that I was forced to live with on a daily basis. And I'm going to give you an idea. Let me get right into the story of what it was like. So, if you would, try and sit back, close your eyes, try to imagine what I'm reading to you. I think people get a better picture when they close their eyes and really listen and imagine yourself in this situation in a medium security prison serving time. So here we go. This is titled Another Day. As I lay on the steel frame bed, I proceed to roughly toss and turn. The fact that the thin, lumpy plastic mattress is only 2 feet 5 inches wide and up against the cinder block wall plays a role. The pins and needles in my hands and the pain in my shoulders wakes me up almost every hour. Stretching out in bed has remained a dream of mine for the past 16 years. The second part playing a role in my denial and absence of sleep are the disrespectful, ignorant, dirty, lazy, degenerate animals that I am forced to reside with. I assure you this is an unbiased, mild, and polite description. The prison is scheduled to shut down for the night at 11 p.m. This is when all movement is supposed to cease, the day room closes, and prisoners are supposed to remain in their rooms for the remainder of the evening. As I now lay in bed, it's well after midnight, and across the narrow cement hallway, four guys are hanging out in a one-man room. This is supposed to cease at 10 p.m. It's the reoccurring theme every night. This is the reoccurring theme throughout the entire prison every night. Across the hall, these degenerates search for tobacco to smoke as intensely as a crack addict searches for a hit. I'm not kidding you either. These are guys who take a used postage stamp off the envelope, gently wash the stamp so it looks new, and then walk around looking to trade that postage stamp for a cigarette. They don't have a pot to piss in. The result of the four guys smoking simultaneously has the smoke pouring into my room, stinking up my clothes and my bed. Yet they just sit in the room without a care in the world, laughing, talking, smoking, screaming up and down the hall in the middle of the night. Needless to say, the smoking is not permitted in the building, but this is their life. This is the life I subjected myself to. They have zero respect for their fellow prisoners. The officer responsible for enforcing this behavior could either care less, is watching television, or he's sleeping in his office. Now, I could easily walk across the hall and beat the crap out of every guy in that room without question. I may even be able to beat all four of these punks at once. But violence is not an option anymore. Violence is something I refrain from. But sadly, violence is the only thing that will teach guys like this a lesson. Talking to them, trying to educate them on the proper way to live life, is fruitless. They act like animals. At the same time, I honestly don't believe that they possess the mental capacity to live as normal people. Because the New York State closed most of its mental institutions, the New York prison system now mimics the 1970s motion picture One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That is not stated to be funny. That's the truth. There are 40 8 by 10 rooms down this corridor, each with a heavy wooden door that most so called men haven't learned to shut properly just yet. Regardless if they're entering or exiting, they slam the door loud enough to wake George Washington. So between the degenerates smoking like a broke stove, others slamming their doors and yelling down the hall all night, guys whistling in the middle of the night, the officer shining the flashlight directly in my eyes during their occasional rounds, sleep is not one of I can find, and sleep is not one of peace. Because I head to my program at 7:30 in the morning, I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. It's the only bit of silence I'll obtain throughout the day. And believe it or not, at 5:30 someone will be up slamming their door or talking in the hall. I grab my toiletries and I head to the community bathroom. This is truly a danger zone. In this bathroom you will find 8 sinks, 3 showers, 2 urinals, 4 toilets, and 1 slop sink. In every area, and I mean every area, you will find mold, food, fungus, hair, filth, bugs, snot, and things I don't even recognize. As I move towards the last sink, it has rice and beans in it. Actual rice and beans. The other sink has pasta clogging the drain. Another has red sauce splattered all over the handles. And all of the sinks have dried toothpaste that these animals have spit everywhere when rinsing their mouths. As I explain this, I am embarrassed to even admit that I live here. None of the sinks should look like this. There is a slop sink in the corner for the purpose of washing dishes and clothes. But the slop sink is another story. Besides the forever remaining puddle of stagnant water on the floor that everyone refuses to mop up, the sink itself has so much sludge built it's turned gray and black, and the mosquitoes have discovered their home on the moldy walls. The stainless steel shelf above the sink is occupied by someone's dirty dishes, wrappers, an old tuna fish can, and numerous pieces of discarded food, including 2 chicken bones. The showers are ground zero for disease and bacteria, and only a bacteriologist would know what on earth resides on these walls. Brown mold has formed in all the grout, hair is clogging the drain, used soap lays across the floor and on the shelf, and it looks as if somebody blew their nose onto the wall of the shower itself. Believe me, I am far from exaggerating. If anything, I'm providing a limited description. The once clear shower curtain are now covered in gray-green contamination. When I get to the corner sink I use a small squirt bottle of germicide I keep and I spray the entire sink down. I then use toilet paper to wipe the handles and the sink clean, flush the toilet paper down the toilet, and only then actually touch the sink to begin my morning routine. In 16 years, I refuse to ever sit on one of these toilets. I don't care if you pour bleach all over every inch. It's not happening. I have trained my body to use the bathroom in seconds without sitting down. The toilets themselves are another nightmare. The seats are covered with cigarette ashes, the floor is covered with ashes and urine, and the walls have black spots where guys have put out their cigarettes. The entire stall stinks like stale smoke. It's almost impossible to even enter the bathroom without guys in there smoking, and God forbid you ever try to enter first thing in the morning or after a meal, after count time. There are literally 10 guys in the bathroom smoking at once. When I was showering yesterday, there was a guy smoking in the shower next to me. The truth be told, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever that the bathroom or any area should be so disgusting, because there are at least 15 porters responsible for maintaining the floor itself. The problem is these porters have no work ethic. They don't understand what taking pride in your work means, and most have never worked a day in their lives. Sadly, those in authority, or at least most of those in authority, do not enforce or check to see if a job is done properly. And the inmate believes by not doing their job, they're getting over on the system. And the reality is they create a hazardous condition for all of us living here. If I myself confront one of the individuals responsible for cleaning it, it will only cause a problem. They don't comprehend logic. As my old buddy Rush Limbaugh used to say, I keep half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. If I smack one of them in the face or tell them to do their job, the system will only place me in solitary confinement. As I'm brushing my teeth and pondering everything you just read, the sound of some barbaric dirtbag blowing his nose into the sink causes me to breathe deeply and keep my composure. After all these years in prison, I'm still trying to understand why a man would blow his snot into a community sink that others wash their face and brush their teeth in, when the prison gives out unlimited free toilet paper. So after work and program is done, it's back to the housing unit. As I walk down the hall to the room that I sleep in, the stink, the funk, and nasty smell coming from some of the guys' rooms is just unimaginable. Understandable, yes. It's understandable due to the fact that some of these guys work out or play basketball for hours and then, without showering, lay in their bed. I witness this daily. Without sweeping the floor of their room, they will go get the bathroom mop that has been used to mop up urine with dirty water, then use this mop on their own floor in their room. This is what I live with. I decide to make myself something to eat, so I head into the day room and cooking area. The prepping table has pieces of onions laying in the center, pieces of rice in the corner, and the remains of the previous 5 people who cooked laying all around. The stoves have burnt and dried food laying on top, sticking to the sides, and it's apparent all who cooked here just made their meals and left, vacated, never cleaning up after themselves. I squirt down the entire area, scrub, wipe it down, then wash my hands before I begin. Afterwards, I leave the entire area just as I left the bathroom, spotless. Now that my meal is cooked, I decide to venture outside to play some handball. The game of handball itself is my outlet. It's a reliever of frustration for me. And as I leave the housing unit and head to the recreational yard, I feel as if I'm in the dirtiest projects in New York City. They're hanging out in the hallways and the stairwells. They stand directly in front of the men coming and going, blocking the passage of everybody. These jerk offs have the nerve to look at the other guy like he's wrong for needing to get by. It doesn't register in their childish minds that they are standing in a stairwell during movement time. They do this with arrogance, not realizing myself, along with many disciplined others, can literally wipe the floor with them if we so choose. Their discussions are all the same: rap music, cigarettes, basketball, pornography, working out, never really escalating past a third grade education. This is the behavior of a juvenile detention center or a group home for delinquent youth. These guys are so animalistic that after seeing a beautiful woman's ass on television, a month later, this is still the topic of their conversation. They gather around to watch basketball and football with an obsession when their parole board and possible release is approaching. After handball, I come back in, I go directly to the shower, then back to the room this prison has provided me. I shut the door, eat my dinner, then do one of several things. I write a letter to my family or friends. I may write a short story such as this, study the Bible, study politics, work on my dream of coming home to lead lost youth, or work on my parole. The day has come to an end. The sun is gone, and the moon has risen. As I lay on the steel frame bed, I proceed to roughly toss and turn. The fact that the thin, lumpy plastic mattress is only 2 feet 5 inches wide and up against the cinder block wall plays a role. The pins and needles in my hands and the pain in my shoulders causes me to wake up almost every hour. Stretching out in bed has remained a dream of mine for the past 16 years. I will now try to get some sleep. I will do my very best because the fact is, tomorrow is just another day. That was a day, one day in prison, and what it's like. Let me have a sip of my coffee, please. My point is, from reading that story, I put myself there. I understand that. I put myself in those circumstances. But prison is not like it used to be in the old days. In the old days, you had to commit a serious crime to go into prison. I'm talking about the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s. But then in the 1980s, when the drug crack came around, the prisons got filled with crackheads or with people with a crackhead like mentality. And when prison became a business, they started to just mass incarcerate individuals. And then when they closed the mental institutions, the prisons became filled with low level criminals, if you could even call them criminals, low level, low level criminals, people that were at the bottom of the barrel, people that were stealing from grocery stores, people that were committing very small time robberies, people that had possession of a half a gram of cocaine, crack cocaine, and the prison became filled with these people. And as I said, most of them never worked a day in their life. And I hate to say this, that as corrupt as the system could be, as corrupt as some of the correctional officers can be, what I had to live with was twice as treacherous. I'm talking about people that never worked a single day in their lives, and they live to take advantage of every single person they meet, including their own families. They rob their mothers. They are, just the bottom of the barrel, and they have absolutely no morals and values. They weren't raised with no morals and values. And I would watch them leave prison and get released and come back again. I watched guys get released and come back 4 or 5 times during the one prison sentence I was in. They know nothing else. And when you try to preach personal responsibility to them, when I used to sit them down and try to talk to them and say, listen, you are responsible for your destination. You are responsible for your future. You are responsible to determine where your life goes. They blamed the system. They blame the judge. They blame the police officer. They blame the lawyer. They blame everybody, except they never look in the mirror and accept personal responsibility. And they sit in prison and plan their next crimes. I listen to them plan their next crimes. And so I hate to say that if I was on the parole board, I would not be releasing a large percentage of these individuals. The hardest part about doing time was living with people who act like animals. They think that the world owes them everything. They did nothing wrong. They think the whole entire world is against them. And I understand that they could have come from a very rough upbringing and a tough upbringing, but every single person in this world, in this country, I should say, has the exact same opportunity. And if we blow it like I blew it, we can't blame anyone else. I'm having an extremely hard time in life right now with employment, with being able to survive, with financially, right? But it's my fault because of the choices and decisions that I made when I was a youngster. And I try to explain this to the people incarcerated. And during the years, thankfully, I got through to some of them. And I'm in touch with some of them today. And they thank me and they're grateful. I call them, we speak to them, they're home in the free world, and they're like, Fish, thank you so much for preaching to me when we were incarcerated. I try to tell them, listen, this is on you. But that was the hard part of being incarcerated with them. And when I say them, I mean people that took no personal responsibility. And what was crazy, it was a way of life for them. I was there with plenty of brothers who were in prison together. I was there with sons and fathers. I was there with a guy who met his father in the prison yard for the first time. He had never met his father in his life, but him and his father were both in the same prison, in the same recreational yard, and he met his father for the first time, and they're sitting there playing basketball together, like, and smoking a joint like they're home. Right? The ignorance was astonishing, and so it's hard to feel bad for individuals like that. It's hard to feel bad for people who just blame everyone else for their position. You know, and and the officers get really sick and tired of this. The officers get really jaded, right? Living with such ignorance. Could you imagine if you had to live with such ignorance, with such filth, with such stupidity, with people who just blamed everyone else and you were stuck in the middle with them? And they were screaming all night and smoking weed and playing ball and they didn't care where they were. It was like a lot of them had a better life in the system than they had in the free world. And it's crazy. It was a crazy place, man. So I'm gonna wrap this up right now, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it was like just one day in the prison system, and that was the hardest part about doing time. I was able to get around the correctional officers because I used the psychology with the correctional officers, and that psychology was to realize that it wasn't my house; it was their house, right? And I was just a visitor, right? And so I was going to conduct myself like I was a visitor. And I was going to conduct myself like the ultimate and main goal for me was to get back out into the free world. So when an officer would ask me to do something and be like, yo, Fish, go clean the bathroom for me, I said, no problem, you got it, even if I didn't want to do it. And I'd go into the bathroom, sweep it up, mop it up, clean it up real good, and then boom, wash up, go back to the officer. Yo, that's done. Thank you, Fish. Now that officer is developing and building a respect for me where he's not going to bother me. When it's cell search day, he's not going to want to rip apart my cell, right? But the youngsters and the ignorant people, if the officer would ask them, go clean the bathroom for me, they'd be like, yo, I'm not doing that. That ain't my job. I got another job. And then they would wonder why they were getting put in for urine tests. They would wonder why the officer would treat them like an animal. There was a way to skate around them if you had any type of intelligence. Once in a while, one of them would go out of their way to bother me, but it was usually one that didn't know me, usually one that I just bumped into on the wrong terms for whatever happened. But usually you work with officers that know you every day. It's the same officers that are around you every day. And they looked at me and they were like, yo, Fish is good money. Fish is good business. He just does what we ask him. He minds his business. So it got to the point where they didn't ask me to do anything in the world. They just left me alone. They didn't ask me to clean nothing, sweep nothing, mop nothing. And I could get whatever I wanted from them just because I carried myself like a man, you know? And one of the also big things was they knew that I wouldn't rat. They knew that I wouldn't be a snitch no matter what. And they respected that. They didn't respect the guys that ratted to them. They didn't respect the guys that snitched to them. They just gained the information from them. And it was always the guys that act like gangsters. Always the dudes that act like they were thugs and gangsters. They were the ones going to the officers ratting. And so the officers knew they couldn't trust them, right? The officers knew that. If the officer caught them with drugs, the officer couldn't let them go because the officer knew that they would run their mouths. Yo, so and so caught me with some weed and he let me go, right? So they just didn't know how to do time. A bunch of low level crackhead people. And it was torture in there living with them. Torture. I have countless stories about the stupidity of these prisoners. And not all of them. I'm not putting them all in the same boat. I'm not saying I was the only one that knew how to do time. There was a lot of guys that knew how to do time. But 80% of them were filthy animals. And they would rob you in a heartbeat. They would take everything you had in a heartbeat. Because that's the way they are. I'm wrapping this up. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions, ask. I try and get back to everyone. I'll make more videos before Thanksgiving, but I hope all of you have a nice Thanksgiving. And that's it. That's a wrap for now. Take care.